Hi, my name is Klasie Wessels. I'm from Streetschool, and I'm going to share with you my story of how I got involved with logotherapy and what logotherapy means for me. I was in advertising for 25 years, and at some point decided to change my career and pursue something that is more meaningful for me. And left and started a business called Streetschool. And the emphasis of Streetschool is to share experiential learning with people, to take them into environments where they can discover and find new things about themselves through experiences. So hence me sharing this with you from a forest and a mountain. I first came across Frankel's book when I left school, and I read it on my final matric holiday. And it made such an impression on me that I wanted to go and study the mental or health sciences. But I had to go to the army, and it wasn't to be, and I ended up studying marketing and spent 25 years with a very big ad agency building South Africa's famous brands, like Toyota, Vodacom, FNB. And it was great. I had a wonderful career. I was very successful. I became MD and chairman of the largest office in Johannesburg. I started thinking of my life in general and my sort of own existential realities. And something that I told a friend of mine when we were in grade 10 came back and haunted me. I remember I had this conversation with a friend of mine. It was a small break at school, and we were sitting chatting about what we wanted to do with our lives one day. And I remember saying to him that I wanted to explore and go into weird places and come back and tell people about it. And this thought of exploration started to come back at me. That, coupled with an advertising line we wrote for one of Toyota's products. Toyota launched a little bus, a little car, it's called a Venture. And our advertising line for the Venture was have a story to tell. And I just, as we worked on the campaign, I thought, what is my story? And how proud and happy will I be with the story that I'm telling at the moment? And although I love advertising and I don't regret any of that, I just thought it was time to change my story. And I decided in 2007, I decided to leave and pursue a different career, and that's when I started Streetschool. So the decision to leave advertising was not an easy one for me. It was a great career, I was comfortable, but I was getting restless. So it took me probably about 4 years to make the decision to finally resign and pursue a different career. Finally did it in 2007. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, apart from working with people on their stuff. While I was in business, I always enjoyed discussing people's challenges with themselves. So I ended up, going on some coaching courses, doing coaching qualifications, but none of them quite hit the spot for me in terms of explaining how we think and, like a blueprint, an existential blueprint for how life works and how to navigate more profoundly. I then stumbled on Frankel's book again while searching for short courses on psychology, and immediately decided to enroll. So I did the introductory course, got introduced to Dr. Chantel, ended up finishing the diplomat course, ended up teaching at UCAP, and also played a role in the Viktor Frankl Institute. So I then got reintroduced into logotherapy in a proper way. And for me, there is not a more solid, better platform from which to look at one's own life and make plans and go on discoveries towards greater meaning and purpose. So I didn't really plan Streetschool very well. At the time, my company asked me, what do I want for a farewell present? And I said to them, buy me a return ticket to Kathmandu. I always wanted to go to the Himalayas. Did that, going to Everest Base Camp, doing some river rafting, hiking, and then checked into a meditation retreat, a very weird retreat center for 6 days. And one night, doing a meditation session, I had this thought that I want to bring people to this place. Because in Nepal, what I found is, in terms of Frankel's ontology, dimensional ontology, there is not quite a place that touches you physically and mentally and spiritually, for me, like the Himalayas and Nepal in particular. And in a good way. It exposes you to your deeper questions in an environment that is comforting and welcoming, and the people are so friendly, and it is such a wonderful culture and such a wonderful body of people. And I thought, I want to bring people here. I want to come and share this with people. So linking back to my dream that I had at school when I was in grade 10. So I came back, and one thing led to another, and one day I had a young student working with me, helping out, and she said to me she really wanted to experience what a slum would be, what a slum is like in India. I said, easy, just find some flights. And we decided to go to a school, and we interest a few kids, school students, grade 11s, to come with us, and we end up going to a slum in Delhi. And it was a great experience working and teaching itsy bitsy spider to young, little 5-year-olds. It's a great, gritty experience, but it was missing for me the spiritual component. It didn't quite expose me to, the bigger questions of life. And that holiday, one of my daughters said to me, why don't you link up with the Tibetan community? Because the Dalai Lama and the Tibetans in exile are living in India. So got back to the office in January, did that, and then decided to launch a series of workshops and retreats to India, to the Tibetan community, and to Everest Base Camp in Nepal. And that basically became the model for Streetschool. So Streetschool at the moment takes adults, school students on 11-day journeys to India, Dharamsala, to explore the bigger questions. And basically we practice logotherapy, and we expose them to the conversations of meaning and purpose, but combining it with a real gritty, confrontational, in a good way, environment. So for me, the model of Streetschool is to take people on a journey, but the real journey is the internal journey. So although there's a profoundly unusual external journey, for me, the internal journey is the more important one. So I've now done about 32 of these journeys to India and Nepal, and I'm going to share with you some feedback from some of the school students and adults that's been on some of these trips.
How's it, guys? My name is Shane Baston, and I'm currently a student at the University of Pretoria. It honestly was one of the best experiences of my whole entire life. It was completely, it changed my life, I would say. At the time, I was in a very dark space personally, and I was angry at a few things, and going on the trip was completely eye-opening, and it brought me out of this anger and this darkness, and it brought me into a place of light and of hope. And this is just what makes the whole trip unique, and something that you're not going to find anywhere else. You can't go on another program that is going to give you the exact same things that Streetschool gives you.
No, not often in life do you find something that changes your very outlook on life, that changes your very core values that you live throughout your life. Not often do you find something that will remain with you until the day you die. The single best thing that I learned on that trip was love for all, no matter what their culture is, no matter what their creed is, it doesn't matter.
The tour or the trip itself was something that has been fundamental my entire life. I'm pretty sure it shaped a lot of where I'm going and who I am today. I'm currently doing my master's in psychology, and I feel like a lot of it came from this trip. A lot of my decision to do that came from this trip. Honestly, just what kind of an experience you'll have up there. It's something that you can't get elsewhere. It's not something that exists here, and it's a really once in a lifetime opportunity. So guys, once again, I can't recommend this trip enough.
I also do 3-day workshops, 1-day workshops, individual one-on-one coaching. My workshops I do with a colleague of mine, Sam Sparks, and Samantha is also no stranger to logotherapy. She also completed a diplomat course with Dr. Chantel. And Sam and I team up beautifully, and we offer these 1-day and 3-day retreats together. So we work, for instance, with the Ikopa Buddhist Retreat Center. We offer some of our own. A couple of weekends ago, the BRC in Ikopo, with COVID, they had to cancel all their weekend retreats. And most of the facilitators replaced their weekend retreats with a 1 or 2 hour workshop, online workshop. But Sam and I decided we're going to replicate the whole workshop full time. So we almost got there. We 2 weeks ago we did one that started at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, finished at 8 in the Saturday afternoon, and the same on Sunday. It was about 8 sessions, 1.5 hour sessions more or less through the 2 days, teaching the participants the fundamentals of logotherapy with worksheets and exercises and so forth. And it was very successful, and for us this is the way to go. We're going to have to do these things online. So for me, logotherapy is like a spiritual flagship. The teachings are so practical, and it makes sense. And you know, when you travel to the East, so I'm blending this with some of the philosophies that I expose myself to in the East. And one of the first things the people from the East will tell you is not to believe everything you hear. You must think for yourself. You must analyze. And if I analyze Frankl's teachings, it just makes sense. And what I enjoy about it, it is simple. It is not a complicated thing. There are some Western authors that's got theories of life and models, and it's so complicated. It's just, for me, I'm a little bit simple in some respects. So, if I don't understand it, it doesn't work for me. Also, an important factor is for me is to practice this outside the boardroom, outside the house, practically. This is where life happens. Life happens in nature, in the mountains, in the streets, in action. It doesn't happen reading a book, thinking about it. That is pretty useless. One must take action. So for me, to combine the teachings of Frankl with active workshops and experiences where people can actually feel it, then it truly lands, and then they can integrate it successfully. Both Sam and I are curious about how to take logotherapy forward. And what I said earlier about a flagship, logotherapy for me is like a flagship onto which one can hook various other interesting similar philosophies. For instance, Ikigai, which is the Japanese way of a happy, meaningful life. So we are adding modules to our workshops on Ikigai, on Stoicism. In 165, the Antonine Plague wiped out almost a quarter of the Roman Empire. So COVID, it's not new to humanity, and humanity survived it. And the concentration camps showed us that. Frankl showed us that these disasters come and go, but some people seem to navigate forward despite this. So we add Stoicism, for instance, also to some of our workshops. And then, very importantly, mindfulness. For me personally, our approach to this, it's one thing to show people the principles of meaning and purpose, but mindfulness and really learning how to manage the internal world, because that's what the Eastern people, the Tibetans, have taught me, is the importance of managing your internal world. If we are able to spot anger and impatience and jealousy and hatred and all those emotions, and we all have those emotions. But it's one way to spot it, but how do you control it? And you can't control it with logic. Logically we can explain it away, but it doesn't go away. It only goes away if we practice how to make it go away. And mindfulness for me is that portal of taking the teachings of logotherapy and practically implement it through a mindful attitude and mindful practice. On these journeys to the Tibetan community, we expose people to some amazing people, some really interesting stories that shows logotherapy in action. For instance, I'm going to share one or two with you. For instance, there's this young guy called Kunsang. So Kunsang is 32 years old. He's an orphan. He escaped from Tibet when he was 4 years old. So Tibet is roughly the size of Western Europe, a little bit smaller, more or less. It's got 6 million people. Western Europe's got 600 million people. China invaded Tibet in 1959 for water and for space and for minerals. And that was a time of the Cold War and decolonization. All the superpowers at the time were freeing their colonies. So nobody really paid much attention to what was happening on the Tibetan plateau, and basically invaded this country and took it over. Dalai Lama and about 80,000 people escaped in 1959 and settled in Dharamsala in northern India. Kunsang escaped much later than that, of course. He's now about 32. Grew up as an orphan in high school, qualified, went to varsity, and then decided to spend his life helping some of the monks learn English. So Westerners like us would pitch up there, and we will help teach English to Tibetan monks. And he would teach street kids how to take photographs and print little booklets to sell, and to learn a skill. So the one day I said to Kunsang, why don't you try and go to America? You can get political asylum. Why do you hang around India? He owns nothing, he's got nothing, but he's got this passion for life. And he said, what China's doing to the Tibetan is wrong. So in principle, it's wrong. And he said it's time for us young people to give back. Now, often in South Africa, people here talk about giving back. And here's this 32-year-old that is dedicating his life to helping other people learn English and to teach street kids some stuff. So he said, that's really giving back and making an effort to step up. And the last thing he said, it's, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And for me, he summed up the words of Hillel from, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And if I don't do it now, and if I only do it for myself. But to see that in a 32-year-old sort of touches you in a different way from reading it in a book. There's another story. In 2016, I took a group of breast cancer survivors to Everest Base Camp. And the idea was that these women will come back as brand ambassadors for what is possible despite having had cancer. So we put a trip together and we were on our journey. And the trip to base camp is tough. So the ladies did their training, sort of 8 months before the time they started training for this trek. We on it. By the 6th day, it takes 8 days to get to base camp and 4 days or 3 or 4 days down. So by the 6th day, this one lady in Tokozo was not in good shape. She had stomach cramps and she actually couldn't carry on. So there was this moment where we decided, okay, she's going to go back, and you can imagine having trained for this 8 months ago. And Tokozo has survivor guilt. She works for BHF, Breast Health Foundation, and she was carrying this guilt of, why have I been spared? Why am I alive while so many people die around me, from cancer? And all these questions were haunting her. So part of this trip was for her to make peace with this big existential reality that she's got. And also to dedicate, she was going to hang a flag at base camp for Sally Robinson. And so her journey was also in dedication to Sally. So 6 days into the hike, she couldn't continue. And there we were. So I had some conversation with her. And she was in tears, and we got a chopper. And and about 5 days later, when I got back to Kathmandu, she said to me, I want to tell you something. I said, yeah? And she said, I almost died on that mountain, but I didn't. I made it. But I learned what it was to survive. I had a second survival. She almost died from cancer before. And she said, I didn't die, but now I can stand for the people who've gone before. And now I know my role is to represent those who have gone before me and those who have passed away. So in a way, in Tokozo, not reaching base camp, not making her goal, not reaching her goal, had a bigger impact on her, because it actually awakened her to her calling in life to stand for others and to represent those who have died and who's not with us anymore. So, these things, we go to the Himalayas, you can't script these things, you can't plan these things. These things, adventure and predictability are mutually exclusive. You can't have the both. So the way I practice logotherapy on these journeys is to take people in a safe space, but expose them to what life may bring up in them. And this, for me, the story of Tokozo just stands out as an amazing example of what is possible.